You guys rolling? Okay. Hey.
Well,
Government in the dark. It's a dangerous thing. What's being suggested in this state is that public-private partnerships operate in the dark. And I think, as we can all tell here today, that's not a good thing for taxpayers, especially taxpayers who have the right to know. Okay? Government operating in the dark, as I said, is very dangerous for taxpayers. Imagine a world where government makes decisions using taxpayer money in the dark, and no one knows how those decisions are made. It's all because taxpayers are kept in the dark. Every elected official in this state and this country knows that taxpayers would never stand for government operating in the dark or operating behind closed doors out of the public view. That is why the federal government and every state government has public record laws and laws governing open meetings. These laws are in place for one reason and one reason only: the taxpayer's right to know. But in the year 2011 in Ohio, the taxpayer's right to know is under attack because of the push for public-private partnerships. Our governor and others are looking for a new way to operate in the dark without any regard for the taxpayer's right to know. If JobsOhio is the trendsetter for what's to come, taxpayers will be left in the dark and simply asked to trust state leaders to do the right thing. Taxpayers are being asked to trust, even though public records law will not apply. To trust, even though there is no requirement to give notice of open meetings or to even keep minutes of those meetings. To trust, even though there is no requirement to manage or retain public records. To trust, even though there is no clear requirement that incentives using taxpayer money will be kept in a database. To trust, even though information made public may only be available once a year in an annual report, plus the directors will filter what public information actually ends up in the yearly report. It is not fair that taxpayers are being asked to trust that their money will be managed responsibly by people who were not elected by Ohio voters, of course with the exception of the governor chairing JobsOhio, and by people who are not directly accountable to the taxpayers, and they may not even live in Ohio. Remember, these are the tax dollars of Ohioans. Today, I'm introducing the Taxpayers Right to Know Act. Instead of government turning its back on taxpayers, it's important that the taxpayers know how government is being conducted by these new public-private partnerships. The Taxpayers Right to Know Act will require that every public-private partnership formed by the state of Ohio be subject to sections 121.22 and 149.43 of the Ohio Revised Code. This means that records of public-private partnerships are a public record and that official business must be conducted in open meetings. As a former journalist and former local economic development official, I know firsthand the importance of conducting business in the open. There's nothing in the current state public records law that prohibits sensitive or confidential business information from being just that, confidential. However, when you are handing out taxpayer dollars as incentives, you have an obligation to conduct that process in open meetings while providing the public with a record of your actions. We can't keep track of taxpayers' money when deals are being made in the dark. I fear these secret deals will lead to business leaders taking care of their buddies at the expense of taxpayers. We in state government operate under these record laws and open meeting laws every day. Why not continue to operate under laws that have been well thought through and have been working for Ohioans? I hate to break the news to the governor and others, but taxpayers don't trust government. There shouldn't be any question that taxpayers don't trust government. Trust won't cut it for taxpayers in Ohio. That is why we must continue to do the right thing and take responsible action by supporting the Taxpayers Right to Know Act. And let us never forget that there's a reason why these public-private partnerships actually begin with the word public. As long as public dollars are in use, the taxpayer has the right to know how those dollars are being spent. Those are just my comments and overview, and we'll certainly field any questions unless you want me to turn the lights back on.
Well, the first question is, you're a Democrat, and this isn't going to fly, is it? You're in the minority.
Well, we're certainly going to seek bipartisan support for this bill. I don't know if you've counted up the names on the JobsOhio bill. I think there's 41 Republicans on the JobsOhio bill last I saw, which means there must be a reason why 18 chose not to sign on. I hope to reach out to all Republicans because I really believe, and you would know from the advantage point that you had, I'm sitting up there in the committee, but you're out there watching the reactions of the committee, but I saw all kinds of facial reactions that seemed to indicate that, wow, this isn't applicable, and so I think there's some things that probably the colleagues would like to see changed, and as I stated before, I certainly hope that the Senate will take these issues under serious consideration, especially Senate President Niehaus, who comes from a journalism background as well, too. Because there's no question that right now the transparency isn't going to work. But we will reach out for bipartisan support for this initiative, and we'll see how that goes.
Do you think the governor is incorrect when he said this, quote, new way of doing things would require the not being covered by the public records and open meeting laws? He seems adamant about this.
Well, I would argue that having done economic development back in my own community of Elyria, that I operated under these laws. You may have noticed in committee I asked the director of the Columbus Chamber of Commerce, I think I also asked the CEO for Nationwide if they ran into any problems dealing with development under these existing laws, and they said no. As I also stated on the floor, I think when this information comes out early, it's because there's some elected official who can't keep their mouth and their ego in check because they want to run out to their buddies to brag about this big fish they've got on the line. But you operate under these current existing laws, and there's some things that you don't know about until they're announced. But we need to be able to see how the process is working. I have great concerns that only 4 times a year will we get a potential snapshot of what's taking place. And I also asked Director Kwame in committee, I said, it sounds like to me what you're saying is that possibly only once a year we're going to get a look at really all the operations of JobsOhio. And he said the short answer to your question, Representative, is yes. And that concerns me. What goes on between those 4 meetings a year? And I think it's important, since this is a new process, that we be able to track how it's working.
Would your bill apply to all the money that goes through JobsOhio, even if it is mixed with private money, which is what Governor Kasich wants to do?
Well, the public-private partnership, what we're applying is the public records law. So once the money goes into a public-private partnership, and since it would be susceptible to public record law, that would be public.
House Republicans indicate that some of this will be dealt with maybe in 6 months when they introduce a second bill to sort of add some detail to this plan. Are you not confident that will happen, or is this outside of what they're talking about?
My argument would be that we've operated quite well under these existing laws, and there's no reason why they couldn't be in there to begin with. I've yet to hear an argument from somebody who says why the existing law doesn't work. I've yet to hear that argument.
The Tom Noe situation a few years ago, what was your takeaway from that, and does that play into the thinking behind this?
Well, I certainly think that's an example where government can go astray, and thinking this Toledo Blade and other members of the media took a close look at what was taking place. So I would hope that we've learned from the lessons of the past, and that we should never want to repeat that. And as a result of what happened with the Bureau of Workers' Comp and CoinGate, that we can't have enough transparency as far as I'm concerned.
Have you spoken to anybody on the Senate side? It seems like there might be more moderate thinking Republicans just based on recent past. in the Senate chamber? Is there any discussion behind the scenes with any Republican members of the Senate?
Well, I haven't had a direct conversation with President Niehaus, but I certainly plan to do that, to ask him that they give serious consideration to this, and we'll find out if they do that.
A week ago, you asked the Ethics Commission, Paul Nick, for some input on this. Has he gotten back to you?
It's interesting you asked that question because we had put that call out this morning. Did we get it? Yeah, we don't have a response yet. I know that Thursday, I think they spent a good bit of their meeting taking a look at some of those ethics concerns, but we have not received a response from him. When we do, we'll immediately make that available to you.
Is it the consensus among Democrats that basically a private board like JobsOhio is not necessary, that basically you should just improve the Department of Development? Is that kind of the underlying thinking?
Well, first, speaking for my colleagues, we want jobs here as quickly as possible, and we're certainly willing to look at any and all new ideas. However, those new ideas need to be open to the public because of the taxpayers' right to know. There's also some thinking that if there's such a concern that the Department of Development is so bogged down with so many responsibilities, then just simply have it focus on economic development and all the other additional duties be assigned in other places of state government. But as I said, my colleagues are willing to work with the Republicans to bring jobs to Ohio as quickly as possible. We just feel it needs to be done in an open manner.
So if these changes are made by the Senate that you're proposing here, will you vote for the bill when it comes back to the House?
Yeah, that's, I know having worked as a reporter, we're notorious for hypothetical questions. I guess it just depends on what all comes back in the bill. I certainly think that open records is critical, open meetings is critical. Obviously, we want to see the issues addressed regarding some of the ethical concerns as well, too. So I think a lot of those are going to have to be taken into account. And I know a lot of people always say, are you going to support this bill right when it's introduced? And until you really see what it looks like in the end, it's hard to say whether you'll eventually sign off on it. So I won't know that until I actually see it.
Have you talked with anybody involved in any public-private partnerships currently now about their thoughts on how applying these laws would affect them, health information partnership or something? Any other?
What example would you give?
Well, there's like the Ohio Health Information Partnership is one that I know the state's involved with. Others.
Well, as I said, my conversation primarily has been through committee with people who focus on economic development. And also, I think it's important that we not forget about the Supreme Court ruling that came down in October of '06, was it Orion House versus Montgomery, where it was determined that nonprofit records did not have to be made available to even the auditor himself, or herself, I guess, at the time. So by putting this legislation together, we think that this, in fact, would address that concern.
Just quickly follow up on Jim's question. If you would support it, if it made changes on the Senate side, do you view this as the tip of the iceberg? Is this the first case like this? Do you expect other private-public partnerships to follow? Do you support those?
Yeah, we've talked about it, potential of other public-private partnerships. We don't know what shape, if there's a move to privatize corrections, what that's going to look like. If there's a move to privatize the lottery, what's that's going to look like. But it's my opinion, as long as there's taxpayer dollars involved, and the taxpayers have a right to know, and that's where I believe that the public records and the open meeting law should apply.